Behold the Fran Empire, where the elegant Ruharan district hides secrets behind golden curtains. In one such manner, Lady Olivia Mullane, daughter of a duke, watches the world from a tall window, poised, graceful, but with a distant look in her eyes. Her maid Sally bursts in with excitement. You're meeting the crown prince again. Feels like a fairy tale. Olivia smiles politely, but there's no joy in her eyes. In her mind flashes a bitter image. Prince Leopold with Maria Attell, another noblewoman. They're close. Olivia remembers how it all began, a cold engagement arranged in childhood. No love, just politics. Later, as they walk through the lively town, Sally gushes over a pink dress in a shop window. You look amazing in this. But Olivia buys it for her younger sister, Athela. Sally frowns. You never choose anything for yourself. Olivia just smiles. As they continue walking, whispers begin to trail them. Passers-by recognize Olivia. Two noblewomen gossip loudly enough to be heard, calling her illegitimate, a schemer who clawed her way into the royal engagement. Olivia says nothing, her face perfectly composed. But Sally sees, ready to defend her with words and fists if needed. Olivia gently stops her. This isn't the time for drama. Better to walk away. Olivia simply changes the subject, her voice light. Perhaps there's a letter waiting for her. Letters. Her private treasure, her hidden escape. It began a year ago, entirely by accident, when her younger brother, Jade Mullane, left for the battlefield. Olivia had sent crate after crate of supplies. He rejected them all, until she sent them under a false name. Live green. Only then did he begin accepting her gifts. Sally had burst into the room the day it worked, cheeks flushed with excitement. The supplies had finally been accepted. Olivia's heart lifted that day. For once, she had done something quietly, secretly, that made a difference. And then, one day, a letter arrived, addressed to Miss Live Green, from a knight, anonymous, thanking her. That single letter blossomed into a heartfelt correspondence. Over months, Olivia exchanged letter after letter with the unnamed soldier. His words were warm, thoughtful, kind. In those lines, she found something she never had in the palace: genuine connection. But it's been 6 months since his last letter, not a word. Still, hope lingers. Sally beams, squeezing Olivia's hands with excitement. They'll check the post, and maybe even buy a new diary. But then Sally freezes, her smile vanishing. The gossiping women are back, and this time, they approach directly. Before the confrontation can escalate, something odd draws their attention. In a nearby alley, a shady figure is collecting money from two merchants. Olivia narrows her eyes, clearly troubled. It's more than a petty crime, it's injustice. And Olivia has always watched the world quietly. But now, it seems, she might be ready to act. Olivia looked deep in thought, clearly troubled by the injustice unfolding before her. Sally tugged her arm, panicked. Let's go, my lady. But Olivia stepped forward, calm and steady. Flanked by her guards, she faced the men. This ends now, she said coldly. The two men weren't impressed. One of them turned to her with a mocking smile, questioning why she was interfering. He even warned her to stay out of it, saying her guards wouldn't make a difference. But Olivia, unfazed, gave a cool command: seize them. Her guards moved instantly. One thug flinched as blades surrounded him, while the other spun around, startled by how quickly things escalated. A bead of sweat ran down his face as it hit him had been caught red-handed. Panicking, the thug grabbed a nearby cloaked figure, yanking them close and pressing a knife to their throat. Sally gasped. But the hostage, strangely calm, revealed a single crimson eye under their hood and sighed, almost bored. Instead of panicking, the hooded figure actually complained about how badly the thug was doing his job. One of Olivia's guards, thrown off by this odd reaction, focused in. The cloaked person, amused, didn't seem the least bit threatened. Olivia narrowed her eyes, curious. There was something off about this hostage. As she studied him more closely, something clicked. Suddenly, the hostage grabbed the thug's wrist and twisted it in a flash. The thug cried out, stunned, as the mysterious man disarmed him with ease and warned him not to move. The guards quickly took control. Olivia approached the cloaked man, asking if he was alright. But before he could reply properly, he staggered forward, his balance clearly off. Sally's eyes widened in concern. Olivia watched closely as the man swayed, and then, all at once, he fell toward her. His cloak billowed dramatically as he collapsed into Olivia's personal space. The guy apologized, then said that his legs had just given out, and he was in a difficult situation. Now he felt he should somehow thank her for her help. He added that if it weren't for the kindness of this lady, he didn't even know what might have happened to him. Although he didn't exactly look like those two men were any real danger to him, it almost seemed like he was pretending she did something special. But if he wasn't sincere, then why was there a tear in his eye? Sally wasn't someone who believed in manipulations. She thought he was simply trying to appear weaker than he actually was. Even from his clothes, it was obvious. He was clearly an aristocrat. But who exactly he was, and why he was wandering around without any assistance, remained a mystery. Olivia hadn't seen any information about such a man in the noble almanac. Not at all. And she began to look at him more carefully and was surprised that she hadn't understood something so basic earlier. Because judging by his red eyes and black hair, it became clear, standing in front of her was likely Duke Vikander, the one who had won every battle he fought, and who had recently emerged victorious from the 3-year-long war with Security. A military hero, a ruthless ruler of the North, Edwin Vikander Dale, Duke of the North. That could only mean one thing. For some reason, he was hiding. And he didn't take revenge on those two men, although he easily could have, and it would have ended very badly for them. Then, Olivia looked at him as if she figured everything out and tried to ask with her eyes if it was true. Maybe it was her imagination, but he seemed to smirk in response, which confirmed he really didn't need any help at all. Still, she told him she was glad to have helped. She felt a little awkward, but at least she had shown herself in a good light. A good first impression never hurt. Suddenly, he said it wasn't just about helping. Once again, he called her his savior. Olivia couldn't quite understand why someone like him would be in such an unsafe place, although for him, it probably wasn't dangerous at all. People like him don't have time for unnecessary problems. If he had come with a knight instead of a mercenary, he might be one of the newly titled nobles. More importantly, an imperial aristocrat would never approach her so casually. After all, her status was far lower. She then asked him where exactly he lost his knight. He replied, "Where there's a fountain and a lot of carriages." She thought about it again. Maybe she was understanding something more. Soon they arrived at the fountain. It was even more beautiful than the square. Olivia thought she would visit this place more often. She really liked it here. They stopped. She suggested he go on alone. The carriage was nearby, he wouldn't get lost. But he hinted that it would be nice if she escorted him a bit further. He even said that if he found his knight, he'd reward her with precious items. Olivia laughed softly and replied that she would only accept his attention. She hadn't expected him to be so persistent. The man was already suggesting a next meeting, but for some reason, she doubted it would actually happen. He didn't pressure her. He said he understood and would only hope for another chance to see her again. If it's meant to be, it will happen, he said. Perhaps she was simply embarrassed by the way he looked at her, so she decided not to make herself too available. Finally, he said, even though she had just, in a way, brushed him off, this man still intrigued her. Probably because she'd never heard so many kind words or felt this level of respect from any man, not even her own fiancé, who should have treated her better than anyone else. It seemed strangers respected her more than the people who claimed to care about her. She reminded herself to get a grip. After all, this man didn't even know who she really was. She warned him right away that she had high standards and would never accept anything that didn't meet them. He replied that was good, because he always aimed for the best. He said he was always full of valuable things. He left behind a strange yet fascinating impression. But the girl was afraid to admit to herself that she felt something for him, and maybe he wasn't as indifferent as he tried to appear. In the end, she left first. He watched her leave, accompanied by his assistant, who still had no idea what was really going on. The man turned his attention back to his day's duties. But something pulled his gaze toward the carriage. It was like he didn't want it to leave. That was unusual, the assistant noticed. He had seen Edwin talking to the lady and had even figured out who she might be. There was just one issue. She was the daughter of the head of the Emperor's party, whom Edwin despised. That made things interesting. Most likely, Edwin hadn't realized her identity yet. The assistant didn't hold back. He asked what was going on with that lady. But Edwin said nothing, making it clear he wasn't going to talk about it. Perhaps not even for 10 years. For a decade now, by the Emperor's orders, Duke Edwin had fought on the front lines. There should have been no contact at all between him and the young princess who had grown up in the capital. Edwin constantly clashed with Jade, Melane's second son, and there was no way he could be introduced to Jade's sister. As Winster thought about all this, Edwin suddenly turned to him, as if about to say something out of the ordinary. The assistant braced himself, unsure what mood Edwin was in. Finally, Edwin said, "I don't want to go to the palace." It was as shocking as saying he wouldn't eat for the rest of his life. He added that no matter how he returned, people would twist the truth, claiming he gave his victories to someone else or pledged loyalty. He was clearly waiting for something to happen to the Emperor. The assistant whispered for him not to speak such things in public, but Edwin simply told him not to shout, though he'd just been corrected for raising his own voice. The assistant, who had been ready to argue moments earlier, realized he too didn't want to go back. At first, he thought those words were unimaginable, but now he saw the truth in them. Meanwhile, Olivia had already returned to the Duke of Maline's residence. She entered calmly, unaware that a surprise awaited her. She and Sally walked into the room and immediately saw an incredible bouquet. A note was tucked neatly inside, matching the color of the flowers. The assistant guessed they were from the Crown Prince. Olivia silently took them in her hands, caught off guard. These flowers, she had seen them before. They were exactly like the ones the knight had sent her a year ago. She remembered them perfectly. She grew curious about the message. Carefully, she opened the note, never expecting what it would say. It read, "It would be useful for the Duchess to know the meaning of this flower in case she doesn't. Write it down along with the flower. The meaning of this flower. The end of my soul belongs to you. I look forward to next Monday." Of course, after reading such words, any girl's heart would melt instantly. She smiled, truly happy for the first time in a while. The assistant was already trying to figure out what had brought this change to her face. This was the loophole she remembered. A sweet man who chose flowers with meaning. For someone like her, there had to be a reason for the current loophole's actions. Maybe it had something to do with her shameful nickname. When all of this was over, She had a feeling that maybe, just maybe, he could love her. Olivia had grown up in the street of vagabonds, a miserable place to live, especially for a girl, or really for anyone. Even as a child, she instinctively knew her mother suffered every single day, and one day, that pain would take her life. Her mother told her that her father was alive, and would come soon. That she had brothers and sisters somewhere, and that life would be more joyful there. But her mother kept repeating that someday she would leave this world, leaving Olivia all alone, even if neither of them wanted that. She begged her daughter to be happy without her. But how could she? Without her only support, happiness felt impossible. The place her mother had described turned out to be huge. So big and beautiful Olivia couldn't believe it at first. She looked around in awe, unsure if anyone could really live like this from birth. She had grown up in poverty. She thought that was normal, that most people lived like that. But clearly, that wasn't true. At least half the world didn't. Even when they brought her here, she couldn't believe she had a father this wealthy, and she held a grudge against him. If he had so much, why didn't he help feed his own child? She didn't expect a warm welcome, but the look in his eyes was so cold and harsh. She knew immediately he didn't want her here. This move was only out of obligation, because her mother had died and there was no one left to care for her. She feared what the future held. At first, Olivia even thought about running away, to return to the life she knew, where everything was familiar, even if harsh. But she never actually went through with it. Back then, she felt embarrassed. She looked so different from everyone around her. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes were worn, and her entire appearance reflected the hard life she had lived. That's when Albert Lanchinson, the butler of House Mullane, met her. The man politely offered to show her to her room so she could rest after her long journey. And from that moment, everything in her life changed. In the beginning, all the servants in the house began whispering about her. They stared at her green eyes and speculated that her mother had been a street dancer. She didn't resemble young Miss Asa, the Duke's second daughter, at all. They didn't even try to hide their comments. They'd speak loudly while passing her room, clearly wanting her to hear every cruel word. Olivia spent those early days hiding under the blanket, rarely stepping out. She felt ashamed, deeply uncomfortable among people who treated her like an outsider. There wasn't a single soul who showed her even the slightest support. No one was neutral. No one kind. One day, she asked the nanny if she could go outside for just a few minutes, but the woman denied her flatly. When Olivia asked why, confused. No one had ever forbidden her like this before. The nanny laughed. Then with a smirk, she told Olivia that her appearance upset the Duke, and that Olivia should know it was her fault the Duchess had fallen ill. Startled, Olivia asked what she meant, but the woman no longer cared about hiding her malice. She coldly said that because of Olivia, this noble ducal household had become a laughingstock, that it was impossible to pretend it didn't affect her. The nanny even claimed she was the only one brave enough to say it aloud. As she brushed Olivia's hair, she slowed down intentionally to get everything off her chest. She said that the Duke and Duchess, who had never quarreled, now constantly fought. That the elder gentleman walked around like he was in a daze. That the younger one cried at night. Lady Essa had gone from a precious daughter to a second daughter, and it was all because of Olivia. Olivia thought deeply about it, and slowly concluded that maybe it was all because of her hair, her silver hair. The nanny seemed to agree. Olivia quietly said that she was here because she was her father's daughter. But the nanny snapped back. Do you really think you would have made it into this house if not for that hair? Then she added, let's get rid of it now. Let's cut it so short it won't even have length. And just like that, she began tugging her hair violently. Olivia screamed, begging her to stop. But the woman only called her selfish and said that with such a character she wouldn't last long in this house. Then she asked, did Olivia really want the Duke and Duchess to suffer just looking at her? In the end, Olivia gave in. She agreed out of fear, afraid that if she didn't, her life would truly become hell. And honestly, it probably would have. After it was done, the woman looked at her with satisfaction and said she now looked exactly as she should, fitting for her position. Olivia turned to the window and was suddenly overwhelmed by memories of her mother. Her mother had always spoken with such love about her hair, complimenting it every day, admiring it as if she had the same. If her mother were alive, she would never have allowed this. It felt like all the warmth and strength her mother had given her over the years had been stored in that hair. Several days passed. Olivia still couldn't get used to her new appearance. She avoided mirrors so she wouldn't end up hating herself. One night, she woke up starving. Her stomach hurt from the hunger. Quietly, she left the room, hoping to find something to eat and return unnoticed. She knew she'd be scolded if she were caught. The corridor was pitch dark. She couldn't even see her own feet. She tried to walk silently, but ended up doing the opposite. She tripped badly, hurting her legs and hitting her head. She couldn't even stand up properly afterward. In her mind, she imagined her mother rushing to her side, comforting her. But that was just in her imagination. That kind of comfort was gone now. Her mother couldn't be saved. All she could do was remember her. She saw images in her head, of them talking together, of the warmth and safety she always felt in her arms. Her mother used to tell her everything would be fine. That one day, there would be light in her life. Olivia mostly remembered her mother's tears. Even then, her mother had been her only support. The girl began to cry. Slowly, painfully, she tried to stand. Then she heard footsteps approaching. She froze. She wasn't alone anymore. She feared it was the nanny. If it was, she knew the woman wouldn't pass quietly. There would be a scandal. But luckily, it wasn't her. Judging by the silhouette, it could be the Duchess. Whether that was better or worse, Olivia couldn't tell. Maybe it would have been easier if it had been the nanny. She stood there unsure. She had barely seen the Duchess before and had no idea how she might react. Olivia started apologizing for being in the hallway, convinced the woman hated her, especially after everything the nanny had said. It felt like she would never forget those words. The emotions Olivia felt in that moment were impossible to describe. She even apologized for sharing the corridor with her and said she now knew her place. The woman stepped closer. Olivia nearly fainted from fear. She was sure something terrible was about to happen, but the woman only asked, softly, "Who told you that?" As if it wasn't true at all. Now, things started to shift. Olivia replied that the nanny had said all of it. She braced herself to be struck, regretting that she ever left her room. But instead, the Duchess gently touched her head. And in that moment, Olivia understood. Not everything was as she had feared. She looked into the woman's eyes. No anger. No insults. Nothing like what she'd imagined. For a second, Olivia even saw her mother in her. The resemblance in both face and kindness was uncanny. Olivia felt embarrassed, but surprisingly calm. She never imagined that she'd feel safer in front of the Duchess than the nanny. After a while, they were sitting in a cozy room. A full menu was placed in front of her. Apparently, Olivia had confessed why she left her room. The Duchess didn't say a single cruel word. In fact, she gently warned her that if she starved, she wouldn't grow properly. That meant, clearly, it wasn't the Duchess' idea to restrict her food. Hopefully, now that she knew, she'd look into it. If this continued, Olivia might end up with stomach issues. And that was no small matter. Olivia pounced on the food. She grabbed everything she could to eat as much as possible. No one could predict when she'd get food again. Everything tasted delicious, not just because of the quality, but because it was given with warmth, not like the cold, dismissive way the nanny used to serve it. At first, Olivia felt awkward, but then she thought, since the Duchess was being kind, maybe she could eat without guilt. Maybe now someone would understand the truth. That the nanny had been lying about how the Duke and Duchess felt about her. That she had been underfeeding her on purpose. As Olivia ate, the Duchess noticed her cropped hair. Just a few days ago, she'd seen Olivia with beautiful long locks. Seizing the moment, Olivia complained about the nanny, saying she had begged her not to cut it, but the woman insisted. The nanny had told her people spoke badly about her hair, and that the Duke and Duchess couldn't even stand to look at it. That's why she looked like this now. Olivia apologized again for wasting her time with her problems. The woman gently touched her face and said she wasn't guilty of anything. To reassure her, she even asked, "Did you do something wrong?" Olivia softly replied no. And the Duchess said, "Of course not. Absolutely nothing." Olivia sighed in relief. Now it was clear, this matter with the maid would be dealt with. Olivia feared nothing would change. But that same evening, the Duchess called the nanny in for a serious talk. And after that, everything changed, as if by magic. The girl began to feel a shift around her. The lady introduced her to her daughter, hoping the girls would become friends. When Olivia first met Essa, she thought she was sweet and beautiful. Still, she felt awkward. She didn't even know why. Maybe it was just the nerves. But what surprised her most was being allowed to call Essa by name. That's how it should be. They were sisters after all. The girls stared at each other for a long time, getting used to one another. Slowly, Olivia began to feel calm in the presence of the Duchess. She hadn't thought that would ever be possible. That day, the woman told her she had sent the nanny away, that nothing the woman had said was true. She advised Olivia to forget every word she ever heard from that terrible woman. She even admitted she felt ashamed for not noticing her suffering earlier. But thankfully, it was over now. The Duchess suggested the three of them go for a walk. Along the way, she told Olivia that she had 2 older brothers, and if she wanted, she could meet them. Conrad, the eldest, was 11. Jade, the second, was 8. Olivia asked if she could call them brothers, like she did with her sister. The Duchess said yes. She also mentioned Conrad was studying at the academy and would be back today. During that walk, Olivia felt for a moment like she was part of a family. She had never expected to feel that, ever. Soon the boy arrived. He ran up to hug his mother. She was overjoyed that he still did this. Then he noticed the unfamiliar girl beside them and asked who she was, not with hatred, just curiosity. The mother explained, "This is your sister. Her name is Olivia. She'll be living with us." And surprisingly, the boy smiled. He greeted her. That single gesture nearly brought Olivia to tears. This family was even better than she had dreamed. Just days ago, she had been too afraid to even stand near them. But now she felt safe. Unfortunately, the beautiful moment didn't last. The second brother had heard everything from upstairs. He stormed down and declared, "She is not my sister. I'll never call her that." Then he called her dirty and ugly, glaring at her like she was his enemy. Connor tried to calm him down. It looked like he was ready to hit someone. And at that moment, only the Duchess could intervene, and she tried. Of course, Olivia was a little upset, but somewhere deep down, she felt at ease knowing that most of her family treated her kindly and might even be there to protect her, like now. The next day arrived quietly. The lady of the house was preparing to leave for quite a long time. Even the maids were surprised. This hadn't happened in years, and suddenly, something so unexpected. Before leaving, she asked her eldest son to look after the younger children and promised to return as soon as possible. She gave a warm kiss to all her children, except Olivia, probably to avoid awkwardness. But the younger kids noticed and immediately asked why she hadn't done the same for the new girl. The Duchess gave them another explanation and promised she would think about it after she returned. To her, Olivia still felt like a stranger, and maybe it wasn't right to show such affection so soon after meeting. But of course, it's hard to explain that to little kids, so she told them something else instead. In the end, she wished them well and asked them to behave, and the children cheerfully wished her a safe journey. Olivia was left with a good impression overall. She was feeling a little calmer now. It helped that she hadn't yet caught her older brother's cold gaze. He seemed to treat her like some kind of enemy. Although just half an hour later, everything was cheerful again, as if nothing had happened. Her brother had even come up with an entire fairy tale. He'd drawn each character and was excited to show off his work. "This is Essa, the Amethyst Princess," he said proudly. "In the land of gems, Princess Amethyst had a stunningly beautiful older sister." Then pointing to another picture, he added, "And here's Olivia, Princess Emerald. Her green eyes sparkle, and she's incredibly beautiful." In the fairy tale, all the princesses and princes lived together in happiness under Queen Topaz. It was such a sweet moment that Olivia couldn't help but burst into tears. Her siblings immediately noticed. They gently asked her what was wrong, why she was crying. She had such a lump in her throat that she couldn't even find the words to explain. They started offering ideas, asking how they could help. Their kindness made her even more emotional, because for the first time, she felt truly loved, truly included. But that comforting thought didn't last even a day. Her hopes of belonging, of maybe having a family, shattered quickly. Later, she heard the cruel words, "It's all because of you. If you hadn't come, everything would have been fine." Of course, it was her older brother who said those things. He was the only one who couldn't stand her. He screamed at her, his voice shaking the walls. She wanted to tell him it wasn't her fault, that they shared the same father, and after her mother died, the adults decided to send her here. She was just a child, going along with whatever the grown-ups said. But then, something even worse happened. Tragedy struck. News arrived that the lady's carriage had overturned on the road. She didn't survive. No one told the youngest daughter yet, but Olivia already knew. Her little sister kept asking where their mother had gone, why everyone looked so sad, and why the house had gone so quiet. She had a feeling something was wrong, but didn't know exactly what. She kept saying how much she missed her mother and asking when she'd be back. No one could answer her. Soon after, the little girl began to fall ill. The servants sent for a doctor, but he was delayed. The child cried nonstop, couldn't sleep peacefully, and now had a high fever along with shivers through her body. Olivia promised herself that she'd stay by her side. She knew how much it meant to have someone beside you when everything feels broken. The little girl looked up at her with those pleading eyes, and Olivia could barely hold back the truth anymore. But even then, she couldn't find the right moment to say anything. Things were already so heavy when, all of a sudden, the children's father stormed into the room. His eyes fixed on Olivia, cold, sharp, full of blame. She had no idea why he looked at her like that. He walked straight to her and grabbed her by the wrist. It hurt, but Olivia was too shocked to react. She just stood there and let him pull her along. When he started dragging her out of the room, the youngest daughter began crying and screaming, begging him not to take Olivia away. "She's better than the maids. I want to be with her," she shouted. But he didn't stop. He took Olivia into another room and then threw her against the wall like she was trash. It was painful and humiliating. Still, Olivia tried to speak. "I just want to go back to Estella," to calm her down. But the man's voice cut through the air. "How dare you say my daughter's name?" His words hit like knives. It hurt even more coming from a father. His eyes were full of grief, rage, and something darker. He looked like he might strike her. Then he muttered, "If you hadn't bumped into my wife in the hallway that day, she wouldn't have known." But Olivia didn't understand what he meant. What had she done? And just like that, he stopped talking. He left her there and went to comfort his younger daughter. For the first time since she arrived, Olivia felt exactly how she had feared she would feel in this house, like an unwanted burden. She realized that her father might never forgive her, and the worst part was, she still didn't know what she'd done wrong. He sat beside Issa, holding back tears, but failing miserably. Olivia stood there in silence, lost in her thoughts, until someone gently spoke up. Her assistant had been waiting quietly, not wanting to interrupt. But finally she asked, "Miss Olivia, is something troubling you? You've been standing still for so long." She added softly, "If you need anything, I can help." Olivia just replied, "Everything's fine," even though it clearly wasn't. The assistant didn't press. She simply reminded her that dinner was ready and asked if she would be coming down. But after all those memories, it was incredibly hard to sit at the same table with everyone. The scars from her childhood still clung to her heart. She kept fearing someone would bring it all up again and throw the blame back on her. Just like before. At dinner, when she quietly got up, her sister and brother noticed. He pointed out that she hadn't even finished half her food and gently asked her to eat a little more. She explained that she had to eat less than usual since her debut was approaching. But instead of supporting her, he started playing games again. He told her that Jade had sent a letter early that morning and casually asked if she wanted to see it. My sister instantly dropped her restraint and devoured her meal like she hadn't eaten in days. She even said the steak tasted especially good today. Eventually, he agreed to hand over the letter. But honestly, he should have done that in the first place. Why all this manipulation? Everyone had been waiting for that letter, desperate to know if Jade was safe. And yet, here he was turning it into a performance, his usual way of controlling things. Jade, the noble knight, had volunteered to go to war with the Hebridi nearly a year and a half ago. He had been stationed on the southern border, and no one had seen him since. Other knights had come back, some promoted, some simply discharged, but Jade only sent occasional letters. At this point, Olivia turned to her brother. She asked him directly if perhaps a letter had come for her, something he might be hiding. Because unless someone confronts him bluntly, there's no way he'll willingly share anything that might make her happy. He just smiled faintly and claimed he didn't know. Then he asked, with that same smug expression, if she was expecting a separate letter, like she wasn't telling him the full story. His presence alone was infuriating to her, beyond anything words could capture. Looking at him was hard enough. Speaking to him was worse. Eventually, in his cold, calculated voice, he said there was nothing for her this time. No letter. Olivia doubted him, but what could she do? She had no choice but to take his word and return to her dinner. Though frankly, she'd lost her appetite. Her younger sister tried to change the subject, asking her to talk about the debate, but there really wasn't anything good to say. Olivia had just stood there, hoping someone would speak to her. She didn't feel like revisiting that memory, so she deflected, saying Asa would have done a far better job than her, and she was sure of it. Then her sister asked if she could go to the upcoming debate ball with her. And in that exact moment, her brother loudly placed his teacup down on the saucer, the sound sharp and intentional. He didn't say anything, but his irritation was clear to everyone. Olivia understood. It was better to refuse, even if she had no plans. So she gently said she'd be busy that day and wouldn't be able to come. Trying to smooth things over, her brother offered to arrange a proper escort for the younger sister, just so Olivia wouldn't be asked again. Then, with a sharp tone, he told Olivia to leave. He didn't care if she was finished or not. The only thing he cared about was that she and the younger girl never crossed paths in public, especially at any formal events. To annoy him just a little, Olivia gave a sweet smile, wished him a good day, and deliberately called him brother, knowing full well it would get under his skin. And it worked. He was livid. In fact, he wanted to erase that moment altogether. To him, she wasn't just a nuisance, she was a disaster. He believed she had destroyed the family, and more than anything, he blamed her for their mother's death. In his eyes, even tearing her apart wouldn't be punishment enough. He often wondered how he even managed to live in the same house with her. Meanwhile, Edwin Lelvikander arrived to meet the imperial prince and greeted him formally. His Majesty, as usual, dropped subtle hints that it was high time for the prince to marry and produce an heir. But the prince, as always, brushed it off, saying he wasn't ready for that yet. The emperor didn't push. He simply asked him to listen. The crystal mine had already been passed to the princess, though it was nearly exhausted. This mine, left as a legacy from the late Grand Duchess, was meant to compensate for the disappearance of the previous Grand Duke, lost in battle. It was also the only leverage the crown held over the current Grand Duke. His Majesty wanted the prince to marry the princess so the mine, and the prince, would remain under imperial control. Of course, he didn't say all this openly. Instead, he simply told the prince that if he was destined to inherit the mine, then it would forever remain in capable hands. His words were smooth, but the intention behind them was sharp. Meanwhile, Olivia received an official invitation to meet the crown prince. Word of it spread fast. Everyone knew before she did. Her close friends were thrilled for her, while outsiders were visibly envious. Her younger sister was the most excited of all, urging Olivia to go and come back quickly to tell them everything. She even commented that Olivia didn't quite shine in the dress she had chosen and gently suggested a lighter, brighter outfit. But with no time to spare, they decided to go shopping together later for something custom-made. Then her brother showed up, just to ruin the moment. He casually said that no matter what she wore, it wouldn't make her more beautiful. Of course, no one expected him to say anything kind. Olivia's sister gave her a warm goodbye, wishing her joy and urging her not to be late. She even jokingly pushed her out the door. Olivia smiled at this. Her sister seemed more excited about the meeting than she was. As Olivia approached the venue, she silently hoped that the crown prince would be pleased. This was their first meeting outside the palace walls. And yet, deep inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how nice the moment seemed, it would eventually end in disappointment. People don't change overnight. She tried to keep her face calm, polite, never letting him see what she truly felt. Everything about the meeting made her uneasy. She sensed a hidden agenda in every word, every gesture, and the prince, he looked at her with such cold detachment that she already wanted to walk away. It was clear he wasn't even pretending to be warm. Apparently, he had only agreed to this meeting because others had pushed him into it. If it weren't for them, this would never have happened. And it was all because she belonged to the malign family. She realized then that the prince had a lover, a woman he couldn't marry because she was a half-breed. And now, he looked at Olivia as if she had been the one to arrange this meeting, as if she was the one intruding. That guy made her feel completely embarrassed. Olivia couldn't even look him in the eye, scared that he might have been forced to be here in the first place. Deep down, she felt like his smile was just a mask. There was no warmth behind it, just plain indifference. They were now seated across from each other. The prince didn't even bother offering her anything. Tea, snacks, nothing. It was his assistant who took the initiative, quietly setting down tea, sugar, napkins, everything. If not for her, they'd have just sat at a dry, empty table. He asked how she was doing, but before she could even open her mouth, he laughed and said, "As if I care how you're doing." His words hit harder than expected. Even the assistant froze, surprised by how casually cruel he sounded. She tried to linger longer than needed, pretending to move slowly just to eavesdrop so she could gossip later. Olivia already wanted to walk out. He made it very clear. They were meeting not because he wanted to, but because someone told him to. The way he smiled was twisted, like he was itching to say something that would please him but crush her. While he slowly sipped his tea halfway through the cup, he suddenly turned and told his assistant, "Bring fig jam." It wasn't a simple request. He knew Olivia hated figs, but Maria Ethel loved them, which meant he did it intentionally, as if to shove his true affections in her face. Just another reminder that his heart belonged to someone else. And here she was stuck playing this cold charade. The conversation? It went nowhere. Just spiteful jabs wrapped in polite phrases. Maybe it was best to just call it off. After all, people saw them meet. That's enough. Nothing's holding them here anymore. A normal conversation between them? Impossible. There was always some kind of complaint or mocking tone underneath it all. And worst of all, only he could say such things and get away with it. If she tried, she'd be accused of being disrespectful. Left with no choice, Olivia forced a smile and said she had recently developed a liking for figs. She even thanked him for the treat. But inside, she was breaking. She knew she couldn't pretend for much longer. Before they even brought the jam, he was already standing up, saying he couldn't stay longer without his beloved. That was it. Clear as day. He didn't care about anyone else, anyone outside that little circle of his love. They were just shadows to him. Background noise. Olivia wished him a good day. Those words, so basic, somehow hit him. He paused, looked like he wanted to say something, so she added, "Thanks for your time." He came close, looked her in the eyes, and then he said it, cool and sharp, "That color, it doesn't suit you. Actually, I don't think any color would make you look good." She stood frozen, and quietly asked him not to send her flowers anymore. He laughed. "That's not even funny." And just like that, he left. She stayed behind, completely alone in the room, lost in thought. Maybe she'd been wrong all along. Those flowers, expensive gifts, handwritten cards, sweet notes, they weren't from him. She had believed they were, just for show, to make it seem like everything was okay. But maybe it wasn't him at all. Maybe someone else had been sending them. Maybe she had a secret admirer. She didn't know what to feel anymore. Everything inside her felt like a tangled knot. She didn't even want to think, just wanted to return to the palace and clear her head. But the problem was, she had told her attendants to pick her up at a specific time. And now she had to wait. So she stepped outside. And right then, she ran into someone she definitely didn't expect. He didn't expect her either. He removed his hood and smiled, saying something cheesy like, "Guess fate brought us together again." But it worked. That smile of his, it always made her feel at ease. He had this calm energy that made her feel safe. They even joked about their earlier conversation, where he had promised that if fate reunited them, he'd gift her something precious, jewelry even. What was strange, she was the one who brought it up. She wasn't the kind of girl to ask for gifts. Maybe she didn't care how he saw her. Or maybe she was just too tired to pretend. He smiled and said of course he remembered, but the look on his face said otherwise. Like maybe this wasn't the best time, but he didn't want to ruin her mood. So she asked him for one simple favor, just a ride back home. She didn't want to wait for her attendants, and this way, she could get home before them. And honestly, being near him made her feel peaceful. She didn't expect anything else. But then, he handed her a box. A beautiful turquoise one, probably decorated by hand. She opened it right away. Inside was something she never could have imagined. A glove. But not just any glove. This one was so unique, so different, anyone could tell it was special. The design was unlike anything she'd ever seen. He asked her, "Now do you believe me, that I have all the rarest treasures imaginable?" But now she was unsure. Should she even accept such a gift? Would it be wrong? What if he misunderstood and thought she was only being kind to get things from him? She didn't want to be seen like that. But her heart didn't know what to believe anymore. Naturally, she couldn't resist. She tried on the glove immediately, not just out of curiosity, but also because she didn't want him to think she didn't like it. The size was perfect. It felt as though he had consulted someone who knew her measurements exactly. And then she noticed his gaze, intense and unwavering. It made her flustered. Still, somewhere deep inside, she felt happy. By now, they had reached the palace. The journey had felt unusually long, probably because she had been embarrassed the whole time, nervously waiting for it to end. As expected, he offered his hand to help her step down from the carriage. Olivia took it, but she was growing uneasy. What if someone saw them together? And then it hit her. Had she even asked his name? She wanted to address him, but couldn't recall if he ever introduced himself. Maybe she missed it, or maybe he really hadn't said it. That thought embarrassed her, and she hesitated to ask, afraid he might be offended. But a moment later, she blurted it out anyway. His name? He simply said it wasn't the right time yet. She didn't understand all the secrecy, But if he said so, she wouldn't push. He'd tell her when he was ready. Then, just like that, he said it was time for him to leave. The trip had taken more time than planned, and he hadn't intended to stay this long. Before going, he promised that soon, very soon, he'd reveal everything, including the most precious gift. Surprised, she asked if there was really anything left that could impress her after such a beautiful glove. He grinned. How about a one-of-a-kind sword, encrusted with jewels? She didn't know what to say. Deep down, she didn't feel worthy of such grand gifts. What reason could there possibly be? Meanwhile, Olivia had already arranged a formal meeting. She told her assistant it was important, and he agreed to meet. He asked if he could help, and she confessed she just wanted to confirm something. Top Palace, the palace where all past brides of the crown prince lived. The one reserved for the crown princess after marriage. Recently, Olivia had been given a room there. Now she was asking what would happen if servants crossed their boundaries. The man seemed offended, firstly because she referred to him as an assistant, and secondly because she was acting as though she was in charge. Her father had changed. He had come to accept that one day, Olivia might outdrink him. He even accepted that she only came to him when she needed help, sometimes calling him her assistant. A few hours passed. Then, the Empress came to visit the Duke. It was probably something serious, but he didn't show any sign of being busy. Of course, she was welcomed properly, led into the sitting room, and the staff immediately began preparing refreshments. The Empress didn't waste time. She preferred to speak directly, knowing time was precious. She had heard rumors. Olivia had been seen often with His Majesty the Crown Prince. Their meetings had become frequent. It might not be a scandal yet, but just in case, she had sent Olivia some gifts. Even included a note. That note, it turned out, was the one that made Olivia start her investigation. But Olivia had no idea any of this was happening back at the house. A maid met her with urgency. Something strange was going on. The Empress was at the palace, and his lordship was looking for her. It would be best to go to him immediately. But there was a problem. Olivia had never been allowed near her father's office. Not once in 14 years. And now, he was in there. Should she risk it and go in? Or wait and hope he'd come out first? She decided to go. Standing in front of him, she could tell he wasn't the same man. And that scared her. He began scolding her again, saying he had asked her countless times to become the crown princess, and she couldn't even manage that properly. She still didn't understand what he really wanted from her. Then he mentioned the gift from the Empress. That note. He said she had threatened the chief guard over it, which he found laughable and unfit for a future princess. She tried to explain. It wasn't just a note. Someone had pretended to be the crown prince and mocked her, mocked Melaine too. But he asked, coldly, how mocking her could be considered an insult to their family. Her voice trembled, eyes wet. She told him she was part of this family too, even if he didn't see her that way. That made him angrier. He hated hearing things like that. He even frowned, as if her presence disgusted him and he wanted her gone. All this time, Olivia thought maybe he ignored her because she hadn't done enough. Still, he had taken her in when she was alone, given her silk dress as food, even let her sit beside Leopold, even if it wasn't the most honorable place. And for that, she had been grateful. In his own way, he gave her a family. Even if he wasn't involved, she at least had two people who felt like family. But recently, he had become colder, stricter, always reminding her that even though she lived here, I could change in a second. He told her to clean up the rumors surrounding her and not to speak to her younger sister without his permission. If he really didn't consider her part of the family then, technically he wasn't her father. So she didn't owe him obedience. But she didn't say that out loud. She just tried to explain she hadn't done anything wrong. But he didn't listen. He cut her off and ordered her to leave. She wasn't to enter his office unless he called for her. It hurt deeply. He always believed he was right. But he wasn't. Not always. The girl, once again, mistakenly hoped to hear something kind from him. Maybe that she did well, or at least that none of it was her fault. But as always, he humiliated her, insulted her. And if he only knew the kind of pain he caused her over the years, he probably wouldn't be so cruel. By the next evening, the palace was buzzing. The victory banquet had been arranged at the Imperial Palace. Olivia was dressed in a striking red gown that her assistant had recommended. Naturally, it drew plenty of attention. She was already someone people loved to talk about, and now even more so. Whispers had started, speculations flying. Was she trying to say something with that dress? Was it a statement? Listening to such gossip, you couldn't help but want to laugh. He noticed her too, and he found it oddly amusing. He'd once told her that green didn't suit her, and now she'd come in an image so unlike her usual self. He also liked seeing her in a bad mood, that nothing good was happening for her, and she knew it. She couldn't even fake a smile. And just then, an announcement echoed through the hall. The sun and moon of the empire, the emperor and empress, had arrived. But this time they weren't alone. Within was their daughter, a young woman the people were no less excited to see. Beautiful, poised, and elegant as always. The emperor addressed the gathering, saying that this long war was finally over. It was the happiest day of his life, and of everyone present. But then he paused, noting that he hadn't yet seen the true stars of the evening. Where were they hiding? Right on cue he appeared. He thanked the emperor for the invitation, and the hall fell into complete silence as he spoke. He was too respected for it to be any other way. The emperor was thrilled that his most glorious knights had finally arrived and asked why they had come so late to the feast prepared just for them. The man apologized, explaining that there were reasons, though he was ready to make up for it. The emperor teased that they were beginning to think the empire's first knight was ignoring the ladies altogether. Yet now, the moment had come for him to take the knight's oath. It meant he would have to find a worthy lady tonight, and in the emperor's name, he would even swear to fulfill one of her wishes. All eyes were on him, waiting for him to take the oath and hand the ceremonial sword to the chosen lady. But he didn't move. He didn't even look in her direction. Olivia was already growing nervous. Why was he hesitating? Why wasn't he doing it? Then suddenly he turned and walked away, right toward another girl. But in the very next moment, he was kneeling beside Olivia. It turned out that, as he had promised, he would give her the sword on a day that was truly special, in a way she could never have seen coming. He said it was an honor to finally say her name. The sword, made of precious metal and gemstones, was one of a kind. And as promised, he revealed his name, Edwin the Lander. Then, he dedicated the sword to her. Olivia was stunned. She couldn't believe what was happening. It was such a surprise that she was visibly shaken. But she remembered his words, to win a lady's favor, one must offer something truly precious, something others would envy. A one-of-a-kind sword that combined both beauty and power. He had also asked her once if she would allow him to become her sword. Maybe that meant he wanted to be her protector. And again, his tone was polite, almost as if he expected her to accept everything he did without hesitation. Still, Olivia wasn't sure who she was to him. She was about to say something when Leopold suddenly stepped in. He claimed that he'd have to take the sword back, as Olivia was now his fiancée. Wouldn't it be scandalous for an unmarried archduke to promise such a thing to someone else's fiancée? But Edwin remained calm. He said this vow had been approved by the emperor himself. So what scandal could there be in giving the sword to Lady Maligne? Unless the emperor's will was being questioned. Leopold reminded everyone that, as per custom, a dance should follow the vow, so he asked Edwin if it would be impolite for him to accompany the lady now. Edwin simply said, if anyone interpreted his action as a marriage proposal rather than a knight's vow, then that was their problem, not his. And just when things were already tense, the princess added fuel to the fire. She turned the crowd's attention to Olivia and questioned her etiquette. Didn't she know what customs a lady should follow when receiving a knight's oath? She reminded everyone of the very first mention of the knight's oath in the chronicles, from the time of Emperor Liam France and Empress France. Back then, in the chaos of war, the empress had waited for the emperor, her white dress soaked in blood except for her gloves, which remained snow white. She had presented flowers at the altar while wearing a red dress. According to ancient texts, there was no better outfit for such an occasion than red. So, Olivia's choice was completely justified. And the princess immediately regretted speaking up at all. Olivia, despite everything, accepted the honor Edwin had offered her, with a bright smile. Those who tried to ruin the moment couldn't take it away from her. Words couldn't capture how happy Edwin felt hearing those words from her. For once, he had nothing to say. Then he got up and gently asked for her forgiveness, saying that he was sorry to bring this up, but he had been standing for so long that his legs had gone numb. She smiled and replied that she had heard he was an excellent knight, but it looked like his legs weren't as strong as the stories claimed. He laughed at that and admitted she was right. Every time, it was she who saved him, the weak one, from falling or getting into trouble on the streets. So this time, he wanted her to save him again, and to begin with, he offered his hand for the first dance. She looked at him, slightly amused, and asked if someone whose legs had just gone numb would really be able to dance. He grinned and said they were already back to normal. But the lady hesitated. She had never danced before and didn't know how to feel the rhythm. He reassured her that there was no need to worry. He loved dancing, and in general, he was pretty good at anything related to the body. So maybe, just this once, he could help her. They had only just started dancing when Leopold suddenly appeared, face full of displeasure. He pointed out that his bride had just received an oath from the greatest knight in the empire. Then he turned to her and asked how she felt about receiving her first oath. But the way he said it, it didn't really feel like a question at all. More like a statement she wasn't supposed to respond to. At that moment, so many thoughts ran through her mind. She was biting her tongue just to keep from saying everything she truly felt. Instead of arguing, she tightened her grip on her partner's hand. He understood and did the same. Leopold watched in disbelief. He realized too late that it would have been better if he hadn't walked over at all. He wasn't used to being contradicted, especially not in public, and certainly not by her. But things had changed. She was tired of always being the one who kept everyone comfortable. Now she just wanted to be herself and spend time with people she actually liked. Not long ago, she used to silently hope he wouldn't think badly of her. But now she didn't care at all. And when the knight noticed what was happening, he stepped forward, calmly taking control. He said that if His Majesty had finished saying what he needed to, could he now step aside, because they hadn't finished their dance. That clearly didn't sit well with Leopold, who replied coldly that he would dance the first dance with his bride. That felt like a challenge. The tension shifted. Leopold turned to the lady and asked if she would mind dancing with him. The way he said it, But she had no right to say no, made her angry. His overconfidence was starting to get on her nerves. People like that sometimes needed to be put in their place, even if it meant being a little rude. He absolutely deserved it. She calmly told him that this was a banquet in honor of the war heroes. If he didn't get the hint, she clarified, that meant she would be dancing with the Duke, and not just out of respect. Truthfully, in any other situation, she would have chosen him too. Just so he wouldn't feel too insulted, Olivia suggested he dance a cheerful little number with the girls standing right behind him. Leopold finally realized she didn't care anymore about his position, his thoughts, or what he wanted. She was done being afraid to refuse him, and now he was standing there, unsure whether to continue interfering or quietly walk away before he embarrassed himself further. Of course, even though she acted so sure of herself, deep down, she was still a bit scared. Maybe it was too much. Maybe she'd regret it later when there'd be no one left to protect her. The night Edwin noticed something was off. But first, he asked if it was hard for her to hold a heavy sword. She admitted it wasn't too bad, but it would be nice if someone took it for a while. He called his assistant and asked him to take the sword so they could enjoy the evening in peace. They both liked music. The calm melody flowing around them helped wash away the tension. He gently held her hand and looked into her eyes, and honestly, at that moment, it felt like that was all they needed to be happy. Yet he could still sense the nervousness in her. This time, Edwin didn't ignore it. He softly asked what was bothering her, because if there was anything he could do to fix it, he would. She didn't tell him the truth. Instead, she deflected with a small smile and asked if there was anything more exciting than a first dance, pretending like that was all that was on her mind. He played along and told her that actually he hadn't had much experience either. He even offered to dance with her more often, so she could get comfortable at big events. She chuckled and asked how he imagined that happening. He mean they'd meet and start dancing in the middle of the street with no music, catching everyone's attention. He smiled and said they could discuss that later. Right now was meant for enjoying the moment. Standing next to him, she would have never guessed how merciless he could be on the battlefield. That behind those gentle hands and warm eyes was a soldier with countless victories, and things she couldn't even begin to imagine. And yet, she felt safe. Somehow, she was dancing better than she thought she ever could, and he was clearly impressed too. Though she hadn't realized it yet, it was getting harder for her to look away from him. And then suddenly, he lifted her up so swiftly, she almost screamed. Almost. But she managed to hold it in, even though secretly she loved it. Still holding her close, he asked again, why was she so lost in thought? He just wanted her to be relaxed, happy. She told him it was because he had given her a gift that felt far too precious, and she wasn't sure she had earned it yet. He smiled and confessed something. He really liked it when she was shy around him. It meant she respected him and wanted to be her best self in front of him. For a while, they both stayed quiet. Then he spoke again, softly hinting that maybe someday he wouldn't just offer her a sword, but himself too, though he added, now probably wasn't the right time. Still, he couldn't stop himself from saying it. Just then, the assistant returned with the sword, and out of nowhere, Edwin asked why the waltz had a set time limit. He wished it could last longer. The assistant explained it was a tradition to switch partners during the dance, and so Olivia, by custom, had to dance with Leopold. Since no one else had stepped forward, Edwin hated this rule. If he had known earlier, he would have been sulking all this time. It felt awful watching her in someone else's arms, even if she wasn't officially his. But there was no other way. Staying still and not dancing would have been even more wrong. And since she couldn't dance the second dance with the knight, she couldn't refuse Leopold either, though deep down she really wanted to. Even now, after he himself had asked her to dance, he didn't stop with the mocking comments and subtle insults. He even said he wasn't thrilled to be dancing with her in the first place. When she calmly asked why he approached her at all, he went silent. She also didn't like that his tempo was too fast, as if he were intentionally rushing through the dance, trying to get it over with. It didn't work. He got irritated that she wasn't adjusting to him and snapped that if she couldn't dance, she should have said so from the start. But he had seen her dancing just fine with someone else. So maybe, just maybe, the problem wasn't with her. Not that he'd ever admit that to himself. It was their first dance together, but she had pictured it so differently. Instead, it turned into something absolutely dreadful. Once upon a time, she dreamed of dancing with him in the middle of a grand ballroom, beneath glittering chandeliers, with everyone watching. But that dream belonged to a different time. Now, all she wanted was never to see him again, or even hear his name. When the dance finally ended, she was more relieved than she'd ever been in her life. If someone had told her long ago that she'd one day regret dancing with this man, she wouldn't have believed it. Then, the girl Leopold had originally come with returned to him, and Olivia quietly stepped away. His presence felt like a dark cloud, draining her energy. She finally sat down, a moment she had been looking forward to since morning. Just a few minutes later, a lady approached her, offering congratulations on her first dance. Not that there was anything to be congratulated for. It was her, Maria, the very girl Leopold loved. And from that one interaction, Olivia could already tell it was better to keep her distance. Maria was likely no different than her partner. Of course, Olivia thanked her politely, pretending to appreciate the gesture. It was kind of her, she said, though what she really wanted was to be left alone. But asking Maria to go away would risk starting another unnecessary scandal, one that Leopold might eagerly turn into a dramatic confrontation. It was strange. Maria looked like a gentle, delicate girl from afar. But everyone who knew her understood that appearances were deceiving. She loved gossip. She thrived on intrigue. She had no real close friends, just people she used from time to time. No one truly let her into their inner circle. You could expect anything from her, and Olivia was grateful she knew this. If she hadn't, she would have fallen into her traps long ago. Maria had that ability to scan a person, figure out what could be used or manipulated. That's exactly what she was doing now, silently testing Olivia. But Olivia didn't take the bait. She wasn't someone who forced conversation just because it was expected. She spoke only with those she genuinely wanted to. So this conversation, pointless and stiff, felt exhausting. There was no connection between them, and there never would be. Still, Olivia could clearly see through Maria's intentions, even though the girl hadn't asked anything openly. Then Maria said it, almost like a confession in disguise, that the highest position Olivia could ever dream of reaching was Countess von Love. Maria spoke of two options for a young lady: either remain a social ornament as she was now, or find a suitable match and quietly become the unofficial favorite of a powerful man. Olivia calmly added that it had been 30 years since the last countess passed away, so a certain spot had opened up. Maria was outraged. How dare she say something so bold? Yet her reaction gave away the truth. She had been thinking about it, and Olivia had just voiced it aloud. So Olivia asked her one thing. If Maria wasn't aiming to become the Archduke's favorite, then why was she constantly showing off her closeness to his bride? Maria had no answer. She just flushed red and turned away. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears, not because she was hurt, but because she had no defense against the truth. Just then, a few noble girls approached Olivia. They asked if they could share something with her. Olivia didn't expect much. She rarely interacted with high society types and didn't think anything good would come of this. But to her surprise, they complimented her. They said her first and second dances were beautiful and were especially impressed to learn it was her first time. It was kind truly, but Olivia couldn't even force a smile. Pretending had never come naturally to her. Feeling drained, she left early and returned home. She wanted to quietly head to her room, but ran into Jade unexpectedly. He hadn't mentioned he'd be visiting today. Seeing him felt like a gift, but when she told him how much she missed him, she didn't hear anything like that in return. Instead, he angrily asked who the Archduke was to her. She didn't understand what he meant at first. Then he said he'd heard that the Archduke had taken an oath to her and demanded an explanation. It hurt deeply. They hadn't seen each other in a year and a half, and this was the first thing he chose to say. Then he backtracked a bit, asking if it was all just rumors. He couldn't imagine someone pledging such loyalty to her. And Olivia, no longer willing to shrink back in front of someone else who thought so little of her, simply said it was true. He looked at her then like he was seeing her for the first time, as if the woman in front of him was far more than he ever imagined. And for a moment, he seemed to realize that maybe he had always underestimated her. She explained calmly that his lordship, the Archduke, had made an oath to her. Conrad had witnessed it himself, and Jade could ask him when he returned. But for some reason, Jade started questioning whether she even understood the meaning of all this, even though frankly, it wasn't any of his business. She reminded him that she was already an adult and had made her debut. Still, he looked at her as if she had no right to be part of this, as if she had overstepped. And honestly, they weren't even siblings, so his attitude was strange. Jade stared at her intently, long enough to notice even the gloves. Gloves so rare that someone like him could only dream of having them. It was obvious he was envious when he realized they were a gift from the Archduke. She confirmed it with a soft but satisfied smile. Now he seemed more curious than before, asking if she and the Archduke knew each other prior to today. She answered truthfully, though she knew her words would only irritate him more. He was furious. There were no words to describe how angry he felt. A part of him clearly wished he could be in her place, but he knew it was impossible. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore. He left. He didn't say anything further and didn't seem to have the strength to be even angrier than he already was. A part of her enjoyed this, the bragging, the attention. But deep down, this entire meeting hadn't gone the way she had hoped. Meanwhile, back at the palace, the imperial family had returned. The moment the princess stepped inside, she threw a bouquet of flowers to the ground and started stomping on it, as if it had been handed to her by an enemy. This was Princess Re France, heir to the empire, who could not stand being second to anyone. Nothing was more humiliating for her. She was outraged that Edwin had completely ignored her and hadn't given her the gift she'd been expecting for so long. She had been sure he'd spend the evening with her, but instead he humiliated her. She still felt crushed by it. Her mother tried to calm her down. She understood exactly how her daughter felt. After all, she would have reacted the same way in her place. So she let her scream vent, say whatever she wanted about that man. She herself wasn't happy that the prince had disrespected her daughter. But it was his decision, and there was no point in arguing about it anymore. Still, the mother wasn't ready to just let this go. She told her daughter that they needed to come up with a plan to deal with that girl's insolence, and she was sure her daughter would know exactly how to do it. After all, she had handled worse. The girl recalled how Lady Malign used to ask her to prove herself, to prove that she was worthy of being crown princess. The mother asked if it wasn't her duty to make up for the guilt of the late Duchess, but the girl replied that sadly only Melane's legitimate daughter remained unaware of the truth and still defended her sister blindly. In the end, they decided to send a letter. An invitation. What exactly it meant was still unclear, but the plan was in motion. The next day came. The princess had organized a tea party, and apparently the letter sent the day before was precisely for that. Several of her friends showed up, and as expected, they started complimenting her, especially admiring the necklace she wore that day. She loved hearing all this praise. Though she smiled and laughed, her eyes were locked onto one person. Olivia had come. She sat quietly through most of it, unsure of why she even been invited. She had no real reason to be there, but refusing wasn't really an option. They'd even seated her at the far end of the table, away from everyone else, as if she didn't belong. The princess eventually approached her and asked why she was being so quiet, not joining in the conversation. Didn't she like the party? Though it was odd. Why ask such a question if you didn't want an honest answer? Olivia didn't stay much longer. She pretended to have urgent business and left, much to the relief of her assistant, who had tried all morning to talk her out of going. She had insisted that this wouldn't be a warm welcome, that Olivia wouldn't be treated kindly, and had even tagged along just in case she needed to step in. Afterward, they went to a jewelry store. The rest of the day promised to be much brighter. The weather was lovely, not too hot, not too cold, just how they liked it. The assistant still didn't quite understand why they were there, but she didn't mind walking and spending some peaceful time together. Inside the store, Olivia asked to be shown the best pieces. They were here to find something new. The store owner wasn't thrilled though. She believed they didn't have anything worthy enough to catch the lady's eye, and she even considered punishing the person responsible for purchasing. But Olivia was calm and kind. She explained that it wasn't the shop's fault. She was just feeling unusually picky today, and that wasn't anyone's fault. She'd simply browse more. Then she spotted something, an exquisite piece of jewelry. It shimmered so brightly she couldn't recall seeing anything like it before. Instantly, she guessed it must be priceless. Suddenly, someone approached her. A man. He asked if anything had caught her interest, but the voice, it sounded far too familiar. At first, she didn't react, but then it hit her. She had heard this voice just recently. She turned and saw him, the same man who always managed to appear exactly where and when no one expected him to. The shop owner didn't recognize him. She assumed he was bothering Olivia and stepped forward ready to help. But Olivia quickly stopped her and said he was a friend, so everything was fine. They were then offered a seat and tea to make their visit more comfortable. The man asked how she ended up here. She told him she was looking for a gift for his lordship. That stunned him. No one ever gave him gifts without a reason. He asked if she was implying that she was taking back the brooch she gave him yesterday. That's what it sounded like to him. The girl said that this was what she had originally planned to say, and now she wanted to give a different gift instead. She admitted that maybe everything would have been better if she had just prepared things properly from the start. But, as he already knew, the situation hadn't exactly been ideal. He gently replied that he only did what he could so she wouldn't feel awkward. But she didn't get a chance to respond, because just then, a woman approached them. She recognized the Archduke by name and turned to greet him, apologizing for not doing so earlier. Then it all started. He mentioned that he had seen a piece of jewelry he liked and asked the woman to bring it over to try on. The girl immediately thought it wouldn't suit her, or at least, that's what she believed. But the woman had already brought the necklace, and no excuses were going to work now. He gently placed it around her neck, and truly, neither of them had ever seen anything more beautiful. It looked elegant, almost as if it had been made just for her. She wasn't used to receiving gifts like this. Olivia stayed silent, though inside she was overwhelmed with emotions she couldn't even put into words. He told her that the necklace suited her even more than he had imagined. So that was it? No arguments. He was buying it and wanted to see her wearing it as often as possible. Every time he said something like that, a part of her wished she would go on, keep saying more. But another part of her felt completely thrown off. It made her want to give him something in return right away, even though she knew he was doing all this from the heart, not expecting anything back. Still, she couldn't shake the awkwardness. There had to be a reason behind all of this, but she was too scared to even think about it. Later, Olivia rode back in the carriage, surrounded by so many lavish things that if even one of her family members, especially her older brother, saw it all, he'd lose his temper. She was already nervous, thinking how she could possibly hide all this from them. The last time they found out she had simply met him, it had already been too much. And then, out of nowhere, she confessed that there was something she'd been thinking about all along. She said, if this was all because of a marriage proposal, he didn't have to go to such lengths for her. He asked if she really believed he was trying that hard. She said yes, after all, he was too kind to her. She was thankful for every compliment, gentle glance, caring gesture, polite word, and expensive gift. It all meant so much to her. He smiled and said that in that case, he'd just have to be even kinder. Because he wanted to, he truly wanted to, but he had been holding back, not wanting to make her feel pressured. Then, as a surprise, he handed her a box he had been hiding behind his back the whole time. It was a gift for her sister. He wanted to make a good impression on her, knowing she deserved something nice. He was sure she'd like it. By then they had arrived. The assistant quickly carried the gifts inside while Olivia stepped down from the carriage and softly said goodbye to the knight. Overall, she was pleased with how the meeting had gone. And honestly, who would have thought they'd run into each other like that? A small part of her even wondered, was he following her? She entered the house, already excited to give her sister the gift. But instead of joy, she saw cold, disapproving glances from the maids. At first, she didn't think much of it. But then she heard her sister crying. Heart pounding, she ran to her. The sound of her sister's sobs scared her deeply. She found her sitting nearly on the floor, crying uncontrollably. The moment Olivia entered the room, her sister didn't even lift her head. That was unusual. Normally, they'd at least greet each other. When Olivia got closer, her sister finally looked up, her face full of pain, and said something that shattered everything. She claimed she now knew the truth, that their mother had died because of Olivia, and she would never forgive her. Olivia froze. The gift box dropped from her hands and hit the floor. The necklace inside broke, but that didn't matter anymore. All that mattered now was trying to explain to her sister that she had been lied to, that someone had poisoned her mind with falsehoods, but her sister didn't want to hear it. She didn't want to listen, didn't even want to look at Olivia. She told her to stay away, not to come any closer. She said she was disappointed in her, that she now believed everyone who had ever warned her, that she regretted ever trusting Olivia. She said it was all Olivia's fault, that she was a horrible person, that it would have been better if she had never returned to this house. And Olivia? She just stood there, heartbroken. Her sister had been the only one in the entire family who showed her real kindness. And now even she had turned against her. Who had filled her head with these lies? It could have been anyone. But why? Then, just when she thought it couldn't get worse, her father summoned her to ask how she allowed her younger sister to find out the truth. He always asked her not to tell anything. And when the girl began to explain that she was not even at home, no one heard it. As usual, all her words go in one ear and out the other. And there are a lot of maids around the office who are interested in listening to what they are talking.